Everyone knows my name. Welcome, multi-sporters. Those are our favourite triathlon and running communities. So I am Suze, because apparently I didn't introduce myself last week, and this is Mark from World Multisport. And today we are talking about managing and measuring fatigue in training. So it doesn't sound too interesting, but I promise you that it actually is quite insightful.
Yes, it is. Well, I hope it'll be insightful. I hope all of these things that we do are insightful and they provide some value. But
I actually got something out of our little debrief. I thought, well, that's actually not as boring as it sounds tonight.
You always say it as it is, don't you?
Just saying what people want to hear.
Yeah. Anyway, so yes, we are talking about measuring and managing fatigue in training. So in a previous live episode a couple of months back, we did one on recovery and the importance of recovery in training, because it's better. Okay. The basic equation of stress plus rest equals growth. So getting the right stress in training and then the right growth, the right recovery, rest, gives us the growth and the adaptations we need from training. But we're going to take a deeper dive into the fatigue that you accumulate from training. Firstly, how to measure it from a scientific and a non-scientific perspective, and then how to manage it. What are the different processes and strategies on managing the fatigue?
And I think this is an important one, because triathlon and running tends to attract a certain type of person, and I tend to find that type of person doesn't like to quit or doesn't like to give in, and sometimes they see that not doing a training session when they're fatigued and they shouldn't be doing it, they feel like that's a failure.
Yes.
So I think this is a good topic to show different ways that you can identify if you're fatigued and then what you do about it.
That's correct. So the first way is actually being able to measure the fatigue. And I want to talk firstly about the scientific ways to measure fatigue. And with the advent of the technology age that we live in, you've just about got any type of device that can measure fatigue. Watches, so a Garmin watch can tell you how much fatigue you've accumulated in a training session and then how much recovery you should need. You've got different apps. You've even now got a thing called O-rings. You can wear a ring and it'll tell you how to measure and manage your fatigue. So there's a number of different scientific technologies that can measure things for you. And they are, don't get me wrong, they're very, very good. But my concern is some of them maybe are just good marketing and how accurate are they? That's my concern on some of them.
Looking at yourself in a video camera, as I am now, I think is a good way to identify fatigue. I think I look terrible.
I thought you were about to tell me I look terrible.
No, you look all right.
Well, we'll actually get into that in terms of the non-scientific ways to measure fatigue. From a scientific perspective, I think you can keep it really, really simple, and that's heart rate. So there's two ways I think you can measure your fatigue from a scientific perspective, and that firstly is your resting heart rate. So that's your resting heart rate, ideally in the morning as soon as you wake. So as soon as you wake up, before you do anything, when you're at that complete rest, take your resting heart rate. So if you know what it is at a normal base level, let's say it's 50 beats, it's your resting heart rate. If, for example, your resting heart rate is 4 to 5 beats higher consecutively over more than 3 or 4 days, you're probably at a point where you're a little bit fatigued. So we're looking for patterns. And the other way in regards to heart rate is when you're trying to do a hard session, so a high intensity interval session, are you having trouble getting your heart rate up? So that's a sign that you can be a little bit fatigued as well. So my preference from a scientific perspective is to measure heart rate. It's simple. Anyone can do it. You can just take it on your carotid pulse on your neck with a watch. Really, really simple. Or you can just put obviously a chest strap on. The watches that measure it from wrist can be accurate, but they can also be a little bit inaccurate. So I tend to think a chest strap, heart rate monitor, and a watch or something.
But if I can interject, from a scientific point of view, if you're always using the watch and that's what you've used at your base level and you're looking for patterns, then that is just as accurate.
Yeah, good point. I guess as long as you're doing the same way each time.
Yes.
Yep. And it can be, sometimes counting your pulse can be a little bit. But so that's the first way. Know your resting heart rate and get into a habit of taking it on a regular basis, especially if you are feeling a bit tired. And then, yeah, are you finding it hard to get your heart rate up in hard sessions? So you've got, numerous technologies that I mentioned that will measure fatigue that are beneficial, but I just question sometimes the marketing can be.
Yes, true. What about if you were doing an easy run and you can't get your heart rate down? Does that just not happen?
Not necessarily. There's probably a number. That could be just dehydration.
Okay.
Could be a little bit of stress. Could be the conditions. Could be really hot. Could be windy.
So not as accurate a measure as the other ones.
No, generally no. I find the resting heart rate and the inability to get your heart rate up are probably the two most accurate. I use Training Peaks to coach athletes, and that's an online platform that many people will know about. And there is a formula within that measures fatigue as well. And that if all of your zones in Training Peaks are set up correctly and you're actually recording your sessions accurately, that can also be pretty good at measuring fatigue, I've found.
Yeah, but you have to be committed to be putting in all the data.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not a complete picture.
That's right.
So it's a real data geek technique.
It is a data geek technique. I guess my only concern is if you're using science all the time, it's another thing to manage in terms of it's another thing to record and measure and manage and write. And before you know it, you're measuring everything.
And we do have to go to work and do other things.
Yeah, exactly. So,
all right. Well, what else have you got apart from heart rate?
From a scientific perspective, that's what I like.
Okay.
All right. What I'd like to do now is move on to the non-scientific factors. And there are 4 simple ways I believe that are really beneficial to measure your fatigue. The first one is, what's your overall willingness and your willingness to train and your overall mojo? What's it like? Is it subdued? Is it low? Okay. Maybe, like I said, we're looking for patterns. Have we got a little monster in the background, have we?
Keep going.
I'll keep going. So you're looking at your overall willingness to train and your motivation. So that's the first one from a non-scientific perspective. The second one is, how often is your mood changing? Is your mood, you're going happy to sad to angry. So if your mood is changing on a regular basis, that's probably another sign there's a level of fatigue there you need to be aware of. The third one is your ability to focus and concentrate. When you're at work or if you're reading or if you're doing something, are you having trouble focusing and concentrating on something? And then the fourth one is just your overall enjoyment levels of training and a happiness score in life. How happy are you in life? So they're the 4, I think, really non-scientific things. So first one was willingness to train and your overall motivation. Your mood changes. Is your mood frequently changing? The ability to focus, and then your overall enjoyment of training and just general happiness in life. If those are all going well, then you're probably in a good place. But if they're not, and there's a pattern, and when I say a pattern, more than 3 or 4 consecutive days, you're getting to the point, okay, well, we're measuring the fatigue. It's there. How do we manage it? And in my experience, the non-scientific ways probably work better than the scientific ways. What I recommend is people ask themselves those questions first and then look to the science to confirm it.
Yeah, I always liked, along the lines of the willingness to train and overall mojo, the advice around just start your training session. And if you find that after 10, 15 minutes or even 5, you don't come good, then that's a sign that you're fatigued. If you find that you can keep going, then maybe that's just more of a mental thing and not really wanting to do it. And, my run I did recently, I think I did 2 minutes and then I turned around.
So you came home.
And walked home and I was just like, no, it's just not my day. Yeah.
So I generally always advise people to start a session. But if the willingness to train is just not there, thank you, Isu. I hope that's how we pronounce your name. If the overall willingness to train is just not there, then you need to also look at, okay, what's my mood been like? Oh, I've been a bit of a grump lately. That's probably not a good sign. I'm having trouble concentrating at work as well. Well, not very happy. Well, then there's a bit of a pattern. And certainly as a coach, I'm looking at those things when I see people at training. And even in their comments on Training Peaks that they're feeding back to me, they might say, oh, found this really hard, lost a bit of my motivation. What is it that is going on. So what I wanted to, I guess, sorry, you wanted to say
Oh,
something?
no, I was just going to say, I think that that's important feedback to be giving your coaches as well. It's not just about what power and wattage you're hitting or what your heart rate was. It's also about how you're feeling. So, tell them if you're struggling at work and you're biting everyone's heads off. It's important feedback to be giving them, and they'll be able to look at that and go, oh, well, that's a sign that maybe you need a break.
Yeah. So the numbers are one thing, but the feedback through your comments and how you're feeling are just as important. When you put the two together, you tend to get the complete picture. What I wanted to go into now then is that, well, what if you are fatigued? What if you've got to that process where you're training, but the recovery is not there? So how do you manage the fatigue? Let's just say for a few days in a row, the resting heart rate is high. You can't push hard in the hard sessions. Mood is compromised. You're not really enjoying training. You're losing your mojo. What do you do? And I think that's where you can either go to, there's a fork in the road. You can keep pushing, and guilty of done that many times in the past myself. You can keep pushing and but you will bury yourself into a hole where you can get overtrained and overreached, and it can have an effect on your central nervous system, your hormones, and can force a long period of rest. Or you can pull back and take a few easy days. And this is where, if you've got a coach, you're talking with the coach about it. But if you haven't got a coach and you're self-coached, it's having that reflective self-awareness process to go, all right, yeah, I'm at that point. I need to take stock here. What's the next step?
Well, that's where I think that resting heart rate is a good one to bring in there. So if you're getting your baseline data, doing it a few times when you're feeling good, do it a few days in a row, and then you know that that's your baseline. So if you find that you're starting feeling fatigue, you do it, you see that it's high. Each day, keep doing it until it's come back down to its baseline, and that will give you a good indication of where you are in terms of your recovery.
Perfect. Yeah, so that's one way. And then as your mood improves, mojo's coming back, try a few easy sessions. Yep, feeling pretty good, ability to concentrate. So all those non-scientific ways are starting to feel a little bit normal.
Sometimes mood can be your husband rather than your training, though.
Yeah. So you're having that ability to look inward, and then using the scientific or the science process to help you, or to confirm what you're saying. But the one thing I've learned is you can't rush the process in terms of getting to the point where you're past the fatigue. And it's probably a good way to say, well, what's the difference between fatigue and tiredness? Fatigue is where your body is fatigued and it does need a rest, whether that's 3 or 4 or 5 days of complete rest or...
So you're starting to see the physiological symptoms, not just mental.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're thinking, all right, I need a few really light training days or a few complete rest days or a couple of weeks of easy. You're letting your body tell you when that process ends. That's fatigue. Tired is where, especially if you're training for long course events, it's normal to get tired when you're training for long course.
You're pretty much tired all the time when you're training for long course.
Especially in those last 6 to 8 weeks, you're tired. And what's normal is you'll start a session tired, but if you're training okay and you're getting your recovery right, you'll start the session tired, but you'll come good. Fatigue is where you start the session, but you don't come good.
Yeah. And I would say that the sooner you identify that you're fatigued and stop pushing through it and rest and recover, the faster you'll get past it. But if you keep on pushing, it's going to take your body so much longer to bounce back, and you're going to lose more time than if you had stopped and rested earlier. Yeah.
And it is a bit of a process of trial and error, learning your limits, like how long can I train? How hard can I train? And this is different for everyone. The more, the more experience you have as an athlete, well, the more your body can tolerate. So that the overall volume and the overall intensity will be different from athlete to athlete. And then their ability to absorb the training and recover from the training are really crucial.
And that's also the time it takes for your coach to get to know you as well, because you should really be able to avoid too much fatigue in your program. You shouldn't be constantly getting fatigued and having to recover from it, I'd say. Tired is fine.
Yeah.
If your coach is getting your program right for you, we should be able to avoid too much fatigue.
Yeah, and that is all based on a good communication process between coach and athlete. But, even if you are self-coached, having that ability to have a critical, objective look at your fatigue levels,
Mm-hmm.
and then understanding, all right, no, I'm at that point where I need to take it easy for a few days, and not, I guess, as you said before, where it does attract the type of people that it's hard to take a rest. It's hard because there's a fear of losing fitness, and you've committed to a program, and but life throws a few spanner in the works. Like last week, in our situation, you're trying to train for a marathon, and I'm trying to train for an Ironman, and we had 2 sick kids and one a late night to the hospital, and it just, life throws a spanner in the works, and so you've just got to roll with the punches, and sometimes you don't get all your training done, and
that's why I think this topic was good, because it's given people now a few things to look for to identify fatigue in your own training. So hopefully what we've covered today has helped a few people.
Oh, definitely, and it's probably the one area that people struggle with the most in terms of getting that balance right.
Yeah, well, I think it just comes to a bit of self-doubt and feeling guilty.
Yep. But look, if you're ever in doubt with that, don't hesitate to reach out, ask us a question. Say, look, I've been feeling this way. This is what's happening. What do you think I should do? Be more than happy to help you out. If you're a member of our local Facebook group, jump on, ask a question, ask the other athletes. Sue-Ann, thank you for your careful preparation of these sessions and sharing your experience with us. Pleasure, Sue-Ann. Always appreciate your feedback and support. You've been watching these pretty much since day one. So our most loyal watcher, she would be, wouldn't she?
She would be.
Yeah. That's probably about it, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, guys. Hope you enjoyed this session. We will be back next week with another one. So those that have watched live, really appreciate it. Those that watch it later on YouTube or Facebook, thanks for tuning in. Don't hesitate to leave any comments or feedback, and
also any suggestions for future episodes you'd like to listen to.
Sonia, thanks team. Brilliant content. Sonia, I hope you're going well out at Eltham. Helen, thanks team. Cool. All right. Always good to know we've got people watching.
Say goodbye. Bye.
I always struggle. Bye.